Welcome to this special bonus episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Zach Semke, Director of Passive House Accelerator, and we're pleased to be sharing a series of bonus episodes recorded at PhiusCon 2022 in Chicago. These interviews were made possible by generous support from Corp and Zola Windows. In this interview, Passive House podcast co-host Matthew Cutler-Welsh speaks with Sam McAfee of Zola Windows.
Sam McAfee. I'm with Zola Windows, and I've had 5 startups in the Passive House space.
Yeah.
I'm one of the original members of New York Passive House.
Yeah.
And I was a contractor who built one of the first historic retrofits in New York City, which was used to establish the international interfit standard.
That's quite the
landmark. That's the landscape. So yes, I'm a Zola window fenestration expert, but I also am one of the original co-founders of 475 High Performance Building Supply.
Yep.
I was one of the co-founders of FenTrend, Global Window and Door Marketplace, FenIQ, database visualization for construction permits, and I've also helped and was the key person who developed the landmark window with Zola. So yeah, I was the contractor executing one of the first passive houses without this entire support structure.
Yeah.
So none of these places existed. None of these manufacturers were here. And so we were bringing in windows directly from Germany.
Yeah.
With that package, we had tape that arrived for installation, stuff that I'd never seen in my life.
Yeah.
And we were using membranes and liquids that just weren't available. I was using bathroom-based elastomeric paints because I couldn't get my hand on Stowe, or Stowe couldn't get to me fast enough. Or I was using American-based house wraps that said they were airtight, only to find out that they were micro-perforated with little pins to let moisture move through them, because I can see that they're, in fact, perforated.
Which is still
not airtight to Passive House, but that's common
commonly
today.
Used.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what Tyvek is.
But how did you get from sculpting to building houses?
So I was San Francisco Internet 1.0.
Right.
In the 90s.
Late 90s? Early 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mid. I was Internet 1.0 through early 2000s.
Chat rooms.
And and then found myself in New York City, bored with the internet as it was collapsing, and decided to pivot to construction, which is what I grew up around, and more hands-on with my sculpture degree.
Yeah.
Ended up working as a design builder, doing custom residential.
Yeah.
Doing what people thought was green. Maybe doing some airtightness, maybe putting some silicone caulk on some joints, on some studs, using an R6, a 2x6 wall with a bit more insulation.
And a lot of passive solar?
Thinking that's right, but it's all like Anderson 200, Windows 400. It was still inexpensive and leaky. And then I'd moved to New York by that time, and I was running large luxury construction projects, historic retrofits. I was then out on my own, doing my own projects as an owner of a construction company.
Right.
And then the 2008 recession hit. And it was a little brutal. Getting beat up, and I just thought to myself, if I was going to continue to do construction, that I wanted to do green construction, which is what I cared about. And if I was going to do green construction, I'm going to find the most efficient green construction there is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, of course it's Passive House. I read all about it back in 2003. So I went looking for it and found out it didn't exist in the United States. I'd found out about it because of a Washington Post little tidbit article, in 2002, 2003. Some mention of it.
Right.
Yeah. So I went looking for it and found it in New York. There's a meetup group of Passive House people who cared.
And was that Katrina? Who was that?
That was Ken Levinson and Forrest Boostman and a couple other, and Chris. Names are eluding me.
So some links.
There's lots of established. Yeah. All with the German Institute.
Yeah, right.
with connections to Phius at the time, because it was all together.
Yeah, but there must have been other options, like lead or...
People were having me do lead. I saw through lead, though, and I knew that the board game didn't line up for energy efficiency. It might for chemical, and it does really great for implementing lower.
Yep.
But it didn't solve the energy efficiency net zero. It didn't lead us there. I had found out about this group through a Dutch friend of my family. And he introduced me to his Dutch friend who played field hockey with Flores. So I started going to these meetup groups, and that meetup group ended up turning into New York Passive House and forming a few months later. And I was the only contractor in the group at the time, amongst architects.
Right, so you're still a contractor at that stage.
I was,
I'm guessing you, as a contractor trying to do something different, you needed to find some products.
Ken Levinson approached me at one of the meetups and says, would you be interested in pricing out Passive House project in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
He said the client doesn't care about Passive House, so you would have to price out but do no change orders related to the Performance Passive House package.
Right.
And they also want to complete it in 12 months. So I said yes.
So was that Forrest that was driving the Passive House?
What's that?
The client wasn't asking for Passive House.
I won't name names, but the client wanted to show up his brother-in-law who was building a green home and kind of an eco guy.
Right.
He wanted to show him up with something better, faster, cheaper.
So they didn't know that they wanted Passive House.
He just wanted to show up his brother-in-law.
And that was Forrest's solution, was
to go one up
Passive House.
and do it in 12 months.
Right.
It was Ken. Ken was the architect on the project.
And so you needed to find some products and materials.
Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff being brought to the table, being served. I was contractor. I was probably the least informed at the time.
Yeah.
Ken was great. He was the most informed, modeled it, working with Phius, bringing stuff in, sourcing products, and then I was just going to be the one implementing it, tradesman executing it.
Yeah.
But along the process, I learned a lot, and I also got trained and became a Passive House certified modeler. And that was my last construction project.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. From that, the three of us on the project, Ken, Flores, and Sam, decided to form 475 a performance building squad.
Because I imagine going through that design process, you would have been... Were you selecting products from Europe? Or?
Yeah, the ecosystem was quite small. And I think at that time, the first Phius conference had taken place in 2009 or 10.
Right.
And from that, there were some suppliers of European descent who were bringing in products that they were aware of. And Tanner was heavily his Windows at the time we were using.
So what made you end up in the Windows space?
So after that project and into the 475, I was starting to get consulting projects more and more similar to the project I had taken on in the landmarked historic retrofit to Passive House standard in New York City.
Yeah.
The cost of Windows was too high, and there was an opening to find and or design a cost-effective competitive window to what they were already using in these historic retro parts, the Marvin Ultimate.
Right.
So I called every window company in the space I knew, and Zola said yes.
Right.
So I co-developed the historic retrofit window, and it priced less than a Marvin Ultimate.
Wow.
So it was Passive House level, historic retrofit, direct to customer, cheaper.
Yeah. Now we've talked about Zola quite a bit or a little bit on Passive House Accelerator and Passive House podcast, but just to remind people kind of where you're at today in terms of design, where it's made,
products, structure, how we work, the whole thing. Yeah. So Zola is a U.S. company, and they have a manufacturing partnership with a Polish factory. So the metaphor is we're the Lexus to their Toyota.
Nice.
So we design our products. We have our staff. We work in their factory. They produce our product for us.
Yeah.
And that product is North American, and they can't be sold to anybody else in North America.
Yeah.
So we're refining, updating, creating very specific product solutions to North American project problems.
Yeah.
And
they have the efficiency of the factory, and
they have the historic, they have the source, they have the wood, and then we've expanded their factory capacity with all the aluminum and other stuff that we're doing with them. So
you're doing, now you've got wood, PVC?
We're UPVC. We're wood. We're wood clad.
Yeah.
We're aluminum, and we're just launching our steel product line as well.
Yeah. And is that so? Steel is the premium?
Steel is a premium, and it's the hardest to fabricate.
Yeah.
It's the most expensive frame to acquire as well. So it's got a lot of expensive products to it.
Yeah. What's the share among the other materials? Is UPVC becoming more and more popular, or where is it sitting with aluminium?
Yeah, so something that I learned in my days in Fen Trend and global marketplace analysis is that there's about somewhere in between 38 and 42 separate window markets in the United States.
Right.
Yeah. So when somebody says, hey, I need a window for my project, they kind of fall into one of these 42 buckets.
Yeah.
And so Zola occupies only a few of those. Right. So if you were to ask for skyscraper curtain wall, you probably shouldn't be talking to Zola because that's not our sweet spot.
Yeah.
If you're looking for no performance, cheapest possible windows for a house, you're not going to, that's the bookends. You're not going to be talking to Zola about those extreme ends, right? We are good at large, high performance openings.
Yeah.
We're good at design focused buildings that have quality already in the equation.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the lowest budget number, competitiveness at the least amount of costs, there are definitely other window companies who are better at that.
Yeah.
So, also, like if you're just looking for one or two windows, really you're kind of stuck. There's not a lot of high performance manufacturers that can provide you just a few windows because it's all custom made and shipped directly to you.
Yeah.
That's just how the infrastructure works.
Right.
So we're UPVC, we're wood clad, we're aluminum, we're steel. Most of our product class is wood clad and aluminum.
Right.
And we're going to see steel take off because there's a broken aspect to steel windows in the US, and so we'll be half the price at double the performance.
And will that be for both new and retrofit as well?
We don't differentiate new and retrofit, all construction, but yes, absolutely. It'll be the thin frame stuff, so it'll fit in all conditions.
Right, it's more a heritage look.
And also, all of, Central Park with the steel windows, all of that replacement with high performance and acoustic characteristics to shut out the city sound. And,
That sounds like a really important marketing piece of wisdom for the whole passive house industry to recognise that number of markets when you say, because I've been guilty of that saying, what's the housing industry like?
Yeah.
And I think that there is that. It's not really fragmentation. It's a distinction between so many different parts of the market that you have to really be clear about which one you're talking to.
Yeah. So early in the game, it was important to make sure to understand how passive house was going to succeed, so that you weren't barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
It seemed that there was a pattern, especially in New York City, and I think the reason New York City has been so successful with the implementation of this new building method, as well, is because the architects and contractors who are involved realized that they needed to focus on projects where the person making the design decisions and paying the money and also occupying were the same person.
Right.
That way, they were making an investment in their personal home.
Yeah.
And not necessarily developing a house that other people are going to buy.
Yeah, and just flick it on as quick as they can.
And in New York City, those type of projects are generally millions of dollars in construction and very expensive.
Yeah.
And they want quality and luxury.
Yeah.
And in a city that is noisy, dirty, and expensive and takes lots of boilers and is cold, we don't even have to really talk about passive house. We just have to talk about it's quiet, it's airtight, it's the right temperature in winter, and if you do the passive house, you can get rid of your boilers.
Yeah.
So,
what about the other end of the market? Are you supplying into the affordable space, social housing, public housing, those sorts of projects?
Yes, and there's kind of two or three groups in that area. Some require an extreme amount of certification and testing. We fit into those because we have that criteria.
Right.
Others don't, and they're just looking for cheap windows. We're probably not the best fit for those because there's dozens and dozens of more companies that have just showed up that don't have all that paperwork together. We have maybe too much infrastructure with those types of projects.
Right. Where to from here? Where do you see Zola in the next 5 years?
Well, there is kind of an coming apocalypse. We'll see what's happening with the real estate market over the next 2 years. I don't think the high end of the market is going to be too impacted. It's going to slow down a little bit, maybe because of construction costs.
Yeah.
But we have the capacity to do very large, high-performance, huge openings.
Yeah.
Something I keep mentioning here at the trade show over and over is like our Alu 75 triple glazed lift slide. We can do an OXXXO, 6 panels, 4 opening.
Wow.
That's 60 foot wide.
Wow.
We can do a 40 foot wide slider opener in aluminum. That's high performance.
To the requirements of a passive house?
When it comes to the air tightness, there's a couple little connections that probably need some TLC.
Yeah.
But on an opening that large, it's very tight and very thermally sound.
Which is impressive. Then that's a sliding.
That's a lift slide.
Wow.
Huge lift slide.
Because that's probably the hardest.
The reason we're used in more certified passive houses in North America than any other brand. And by the way, I keep extracting the data and checking this, and it's true.
Yeah.
We're used in hundreds of certified passive houses or certified projects. Is because we have the engineering. We have those lift slides that have those detail modifications for passive house.
Right.
We have all the thermal modeling. We have the ability to build landmark compliant entry doors that are passive house.
Right.
That look like the original door.
Yeah.
That have all the air seals and everything. We have the windows. We have all of the beautiful glass. We have the large glass, 8 foot by 10 panel sizes. So we can do all those big engineering luxury type of items that large projects like.
So future looks good. Well, future looks a little bit bumpy, but
it looks good enough. I mean, it's been a great year for Zola.
Hey, you came out of the 2008.
Yeah, I did.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
So.
And the company as a whole has actually, because Zola has been kind of a supporter of Phius for now, I think 12 years. Ownership decided to extend a 12% discount to all projects closing by the end of March. That have a CPHC and an energy model.
March 2023?
Yep. So all the way through Q1 of next year, if you have a passive house that has an energy model and a CPHC...
So given that windows tend to be one of the biggest items...
12% is a big chunk.
That's a big chunk of probably the potential uplift of going from code to passive house for a lot of projects.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse.
No excuse. It bridges that gap and helps, offset some of the other issues with construction and cost, because things are really crazy right now.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Awesome.